So what did you study at Cornell?
I was a computer
Philosophy?
science major.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
I liked it.
Nice.
I didn't end up doing it after Cornell. I went into inventing software and telling developers what to build. But I still use a lot of my computer science background. So there's that. It's not like it was a total waste of education. I did get value out of it, and I do still write artificial intelligence algorithms for the software I use. So I
Really?
use the CS background, but it's just not I'm not coding day in and day out. Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. So did you do all your studies then at Cornell?
Yeah, just undergrad computer science was my background, and then philosophy has been a hobby of mine since then. To be honest, really, I started at an early age of 12 being philosophical and walking up to, the parents I would like go to a party and I'd walk up to the adults at the party and be like, so what do you think is the meaning of life? And they would give me the funniest looks. And they're like, who is this little kid that comes up to my waist asking me the meaning of life? And so I've been philosophically interested for as long as I can remember, pretty much. I mean, I do remember before I was 12, but pretty much 12 was the point which I became more philosophically oriented. So I've been looking for the answers to a lot of life's questions since then, and I think I found the answer to what the meaning of life is. So that's fun. Now I might be wrong, and I always welcome the possibility that I am wrong, but I have my own good hypothesis, a strong, solid opinion anyway, better than I ever had before, and
And
it evolves. So
I'd love to hear that if now's
yeah,
an appropriate
we
time.
have a small group, so we can talk about anything you guys want, as long as it's intellectually interesting and we're not talking about Beyonce's dress. I'm cool. Just don't make me talk about Beyonce's dress or anything pop culture. I'm not good at that. I don't enjoy it. So, but if it's intellectually interesting, I'm game. So, what we usually do, and I'm expecting, maybe one or two more people, but not many more
Yes.
than that. Because I think we had about 10 RSVPs and we usually get about a 50% show rate. So we're at 4. So I would think maybe one or two more people join, but probably not much more than that. And we advertised very last minute this time, and we're going to be advertising next week's last minute too. And next week's should be interesting. We're going to talk about climate change. And I find the topic interesting because all the people that I trust like say that climate change is real, but the people that don't believe that climate change is real said we're within the normal range of temperature fluctuations since Earth's history, since Earth's origins. And then when I looked that up, it actually turned out to be true. And I don't hear the climate change people addressing that argument. So what I want to do is, attempt to address that argument next week, because I think we actually managed to do it in the online forum. Someone came up with a good answer to how to address that. But I want to hear the back and forth of the different sides of the debate and sort of have an open discussion about it. But that said, tonight we can talk about whatever you guys are interested in. So the meaning of life was one that we just kind of happened upon because it's been the question I've been pondering over the longest, and now feel like I have a reasonably good answer at, which I would love everybody's opinion on. But Robert might have already heard it. I think, Robert, you've been to our events before, right? You look familiar.
Yeah, I've been to a couple, I think.
Yeah, I remember you. Welcome back. So what I like to do is brainstorm. With these, we do Socrates cafes. Let me wait. What I'll do is I'll create a Socrates cafe. So I have a list of topics that we thought of last time, and we can use some of those for inspiration if we want to, and we can start over again if we don't want to. But what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and I'll also share this Google Doc. And what I like to do, and you can see how we did this last time, is I give everybody a column where you can vote for whatever topics you're interested in. And then on the left, we write down what the topics are. And then each person gets to vote on whichever topics they're interested in. And then we like sum up the votes. So I'm just gonna duplicate this one and then make it into 10 May 22. And let's delete. this and say, Sam, Robert, Michael, Joe, and then we're going to add the meaning of life, which I think is a really important question, which is probably why I started on that. Like, why are we here, right? Like, what's the deal? What's the purpose? And so that said, I want to go with popular opinion, so I'm going to put the link. Can rhetoric be a tool for arriving at truth? That's an interesting question, Sam. I'm going to add that to the list, and I put the spreadsheet in, and you guys are all welcome to jump in there. I like the meaning of life, and can rhetoric be used as a tool for arriving at truth? So, you guys can read the other ones and, vote on whatever is of interest to you, add any additional ones to the bottom here. And then, we can talk about whatever people are interested in. And we have a small group. We usually get 20 to 40 people. So this is an intimate group, which is nice because we get to know each other better, which actually I like. I was a very extreme introvert when I was younger, so I like small groups. Now I'm an ambivert, so I'm kind of comfortable in both, but
I think number 14 is an interesting topic as well. How much respect should society accord the tenets of religious
faiths.
faiths?
Yeah, I agree. I think that one's very interesting.
It's just, it really is.
Yeah, I mean, like,
There's a lot of
learned,
religious words. Go ahead.
and it's not just respect, it's also how much like what kind of benefits should someone get for being a part of their religion, because like religious organizations are not taxed, for example, and because of that, I think it's Hasidic Jews consider their homes to be places of worship, and therefore they don't get taxed on their homes, someone told me. And I don't know if that's true. I didn't fact check that, but that was what someone that I trust told me. I can Google it real quick and fact check them. Why not?
Yes. How are we doing this spreadsheet? Is it, I see some movement there. Is that
But yeah, you can just run, like I put in the chat the link, and if you go in and then under your name, let me open these up so that everyone.
And then how many should we
as many as you want. You just vote for whatever you like. Just put a 1 next to anything you like, and what we'll do is we'll tally up the total votes. And so Robert, great job. You've, I think, done this before, or you're just good with Google Docs. And so Sam and Michael and Joe, if you follow that link, you'll go to the spreadsheet.
Oh, wow.
And then you can just put the number 1 next to any topic that you're interested in talking about. And whatever topic gets the most votes, will be the one we talk about.
Coolio.
Yeah, sadly, I don't use Google products, so.
Okay. If you want to tell me what topics, like I can, you can see if you want, I can vote for you. Just tell me which ones you want to put ones next to, and I'll do it for you.
Cool. Let me take a look. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to choose electoral college, and I have my pointer under my name, Joe, and then electoral college, and nothing's happening.
Strange. Let me make sure the permissions are set up right. Yeah, anyone can edit.
Yeah, just type a 1 in there.
Press the number 1. Yeah.
You press the number, you first put the arrow on the box and then number 1, right?
Yeah, you have to click on the box. And so right now you're not clicked on the box because I can see, I see Robert is on cell E3 because you can see his purple. If you were clicked on the box, you would have a cell would be highlighted. So 4, 9, and 18. Thank you, Sam.
It's not happening.
You just tell me which ones you want.
Yeah, just, oh man, I just lost the box. Hold on a minute. Full screen. Okay, electoral college, which is, I guess 15, and it's Joe.
Thanks. Any other
Okay.
ones?
That's it. That's it.
Okay. Paul, welcome. We're just, I'm gonna repost the link to the Google Doc that I'm sharing here. And Paul, if you want to go in and put your votes down for the topic that we discussed tonight. So far, medical model versus criminal model for drug use is the top contender. But we want to let Michael and Paul vote. Michael, do you need help?
I don't have the app, so. I'm
Oh, just
trying to
tell
do
me
it on
which
my
ones you
phone.
want. I'll put the
Okay,
numbers
I
in
just
for you.
wanted to ask you, for number 10, what is MBTI?
Myers-Briggs personality type. So it's like introverted, extroverted, thinking, feeling, sensing, intuitive, and judging and perceiving. And so they're personality descriptors.
Right?
So, you know, it's
Yeah,
a,
gotcha.
yeah, it's a personality type test.
I would go, I'm gonna do 14,
Okay.
16, 18.
And Paul, do you want to share which ones you're interested in?
Actually.
You can add new ones. If any of you want to add a new one, you're welcome to do that too. And then everyone can vote on that one too. I just took an old list because I think it's nice. Like we had a great list the last time we did it. So I thought there were good things to like carry forward. So,
Would you mind adding for me the lifelong learning and education?
yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah,
Is that
thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, that's good.
Great. That's a big part of what the Freethinker Institute is about and why I created it, is so that we could have an organization that embraces lifelong learning and makes all of us lifelong learners.
I've been doing it right
Great.
along after graduation. I kept going to different classes, courses, seminars,
Great.
weekend retreats. I can go on and on.
So
And I
important.
loved it. And I
That's
loved
great.
it.
Well, I would love for you to join the online community too, and I'll put the link to that in here. This is the website. I normally put a sheet up, but I'll put the my not-for-profit is the Freethinker Institute, and we have an online community where people talk between these Tuesday night sessions in a, you know, basically a social media platform called Discord, where you can do text chat, voice chat, video chat, you know, whatever you want, kind of ad hoc when you're free. Hi, Luella. Good to see you. So let me see
Okay.
if Luella.
Hi,
Hi.
Garrett. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Paul?
Okay. Yes, I have to leave early, so I
That's
don't know
okay.
if I should vote here, but there's a lot of things that interest me. You know, the
Tell me.
number 14, religious faith, discerning truth. That's a big one. But you know, pretty much all of them. I'm an all-around athlete. What can I tell you?
Great. I'm with you. I all of these interest me, so I'm not going to be unhappy with even the ones I didn't choose. I like. So
the meaning of life is a big one.
Yep.
Hi, Garrett.
Hi, Luella. How are you?
Oh, this is Jenny.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would you be
didn't
able
dare.
to enlarge the font of your screen sharing screen there?
Yes, Jenny, I'm sorry. And look, we got more people than I expected. That's great. Is this better?
Yes, it is better. Thank you.
And Jenny, let me post the link to the doc so you can put your votes in about what we talk about.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you just said.
You just let me know which topics interest you, and I'll add your votes in, or you can do it yourself if you want through Google Docs, or I'll do it for you if you want.
You mean based on all the ones that are listed on the left column there?
Yep. And if you want to add a new one, you can tell me a new one that you want to talk about. You can add your own topics, or you can vote on you should vote on the ones that are there, and you can also add your own topics.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Luella, do you want to vote? I think she said she would be right back. So we missed you too, Luella. Are you able to get in there, Jenny, or do you want to, is that you?
I'm still looking and deciding.
Okay.
Sorry for being
No,
so
no,
slow.
no,
You-
take your
you-
time.
You know, you can go ahead and move on based on what other people are voting. It's, you know, I'm
The
open
meaning
for
of life,
any
the
topic.
meaning of life has 4 right now. Does that one interest you, Jenny? Because if it
Sounds
does,
good to
then-
me. Sounds
right.
good to me.
if it does, then we can go with the meaning of life.
Yeah, let's do
Um,
that.
Cool. So this is something that I started the conversation off with Michael saying how this is the question that I used to ask people when I was 12 years old, and I'd walk up to adults at a party and be like, so what do you think's the meaning of life? And they would look at me like I was crazy. And I've been asking myself that question ever since. And it wasn't until I started writing philosophy that I felt like I actually had a good answer. One that's better than I think the existentialists, although I really like their answer and I include theirs in mine. The existentialists, for what it's worth, say we all decide on what the meaning of life is for ourselves, which I agree with. And I'm just going to kind of kick off like my thoughts on the subject. And then we'll just open it up for conversation. And if people want to just talk, you can. If you want to raise your hand, you can. You know, we have a small group, so we can be flexible here. But basically, you know, that never totally sat well with me for the reason of, well, what if someone decides they want to be a serial murderer? Is that a-okay? And I was like, you know, there should really be some guidelines about, you know, what someone chooses for the meaning of their life, so that people don't choose something that, you know, we would all agree is pretty bad choice. And so I actually, the first edition that I had was to say that I think that the meaning of like whatever meaning of life that we choose, it should be one that increases happiness and decreases harm, which I use as like a kind of a general guideline for, am I moving in the right direction? You know, a moral compass, if you will. That's my moral compass, and the whole purpose of the Freethinker Institute is to increase happiness and decrease harm, because I consider that a generally agreeable thing to do. You know, I haven't heard someone come up with a good reason not to do that. And I can define what I mean by happiness and harm. Paul, did you have a question?
Wait.
You're on mute, Paul.
I was gonna make a comment about happiness, but make your point, and after you finish, I'd like to kick in on that.
Sure. The other meaning of life that I think applies to all of us.
I believe it's been a while.
Hang on.
Every year we have it. We have this every year.
I'm gonna mute Jenny. So the other meaning of life to me is personal development, and that's, you know, out of the Freethinker Institute, the number one value is to be the best version of ourselves and seek truth, which is something that, you know, I think we should all be striving to be the best version of ourselves and to seek truth. And I think that's a generally agreeable thing too. And so for me, like, I think that everybody shares this common purpose of, you know, being, you know, like benefiting from being the best version of ourselves, even though not everybody does it. I'm not claiming that everybody does it or even agrees that it is the meaning of their life, but I'm saying that it's a meaning of life that I think should resonate with all reasonable people, is to be the best version of ourselves and seek truth, and also to increase happiness and decrease harm. And so, Paul, let me let you bring your point about happiness.
Okay, yeah, I think I've heard you before, you know, talk about happiness and being the best person of yourself. And I have a lot of questions about it.
Yeah.
And because I don't believe that like many, my phone is ringing. Let me take it. I don't believe that, hold on, it's my wife. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I
that's
gotta
all right.
take
We'll
this.
continue. We'll carry on. You go ahead.
Hey, let me call you back.
Does
in
anyone
2
else have
seconds,
a
okay? Hold
commentary on that?
okay?
Like Robert, you go ahead. You have your hand up.
No, okay, Paul. Okay, yes.
Okay, sorry, Paul.
I told you I'll call it back.
Okay.
Okay, so the point is, I don't know if you've read Viktor Frankl, but I
have.
am a fan of his,
Yeah.
and he makes a very, very important point that everybody finds their own meaning, which is personal to them. And my meaning, you know, I can like chess, and that becomes my focus and my meaning. And for you, it could be bicycle driving, whatever it is, you know, business, It doesn't matter, but it's personal. You decide for yourself what your goals are. But he makes a very important point. And the point he makes is that happiness is not something you seek. happiness, he makes, which I tend to agree with, is a byproduct of how you live life. And you could be happy, you could be lucky to be happy, or you could be unlucky. So for example, if somebody, a close relative dies, you're not going to be happy. There's nothing wrong with being sad, to get depressed about it. And you can't expect happiness. Best you can expect is, if you have a meaningful life, according to Viktor Frankl, is you'll be able to cope with it better than if you don't have meaning and you don't approach it in the right way or in the proper way. So if you have meaning and you work towards that goal, and as you say, make the best of yourself, the best of yourself, we have to define what that's another issue. What is the best of myself?
Right.
If I give it my all and I succeed and I have no self-recrimination, then I might be lucky and find happiness. And there's a better chance of finding happiness if I go about life in a meaningful way, give it my all. And he doesn't use that language, but really what he's actually in some sense arguing for mindfulness. So whatever you do, give it your all. Be mindful, concentrate, and don't live in too much in the future, don't live too much in the past, give it your all. So I think Viktor Frankl has a lot of good points, and the basic point, the way he says it, happiness is a byproduct. If you're lucky and you're born rich and you use that richness in a meaningful way, you'll be happy. A lot of rich people have lots of money and still are unhappy.
Yep.
So there's some points, it's not absolute, but it's issues to think about whenever you think about happiness.
Yeah, no, those are great points. And I would only say that I think that happiness is much more in our control than Viktor Frankl. Maybe we got different things out of it. I haven't read him in a while, but I think happiness is much more in our control than out of our control, quite frankly. And that's because, you know, I say that because I think Stoic wisdom and Buddhist wisdom can be a path to happiness in any situation, including when a close family member dies. I had my closest family member die, and I was actually happy for her because she died of cancer and she was in a lot of pain near the end of her life. And I know that she's in a better place now. At least I feel very confident she's in a better place now based on my philosophical writings. I believe in afterlife and reincarnation, and I think she's going to be, you know, happier in her next life than she was at the end of her life. So that said, I think, you know, the situation, like you said, Paul, it all depends on the situation. And so, but I think that, you know, what happens externally, we can't control. How we respond to it, we can control. And that how we respond to it determines whether we're happy or not. But with that said, I want to let,
let me just add one more point,
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think anybody's happy that people die. You may be happy that she led a full life, but you're not happy in the fact that she's dead. Otherwise, you would have killed her a long time ago. But
no.
but I want to
Yeah.
make another point, and that is that a lot of research lately shows that people below a certain level of income are unhappy, not because they can't find meaning, but they're struggling on a daily level, on a daily basis, to eat, to find shelter. And you find, I think the latest research is the cutoff is at 70,000 for a family, something like that. And above 70,000, there's happiness is pretty much consistent with whether you make 100,000 or whether you make 10 million a year. And that becomes personal, how you use your assets and how you spend your time. So below a certain level, people are generally unhappy and discontent, understandably. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. How do you can demand that they should be happy? Above a certain level, the research shows that it doesn't make a difference how rich you are, it's how you live your life. That kicks in above a certain level of income.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul. And I actually, based on that study, I created one of the goals of the Freethinker Institute is to help everybody in the world someday make enough money that money no longer buys happiness. And it was about $75,000 a year 10 years ago. So now it would be about $90,000 a year, I think, last I calculated. And so, you know, I run a boot camp for teaching people product management where they can make, you know, 80 to 100K, no problem, after taking my boot camp with, you know, potentially no cost to them. up front. And so, we want to create a community where we help everybody in the community make the kind of money that money no longer buys happiness. So I think that's a great point. Happiness and money are correlated at the, under $90,000 a year level. And there is one study that says that it's correlated higher, but it's logarithmically. So, the impact of money is far less, even in the people who claim that it always exists. The more money you make, it's a very modest difference. With that said, Robert, why don't you go?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I don't know, I guess like I did used to think that happiness was a goal for life. And I think a lot of people like use the words happiness and success. Or nowadays, I think more of it as satisfaction and fulfillment. Because to me, happiness is just an emotion. And it's a nice emotion. Like I think it directs us to things that usually benefit us. But I don't know, like right now where I am, I try to appreciate all the different emotions. And I think they all add to my life, creating, I guess, fulfillment. Anyway, that's just my point of view. But yeah, I think a lot of times when people say happiness and success, they do kind of mean satisfaction and fulfillment. It's just a matter of kind of
and that is what I mean. That's exactly right. Like, and that's why, like, a lot of people will criticize the semantics of happiness. All I mean is whatever you desire, like that you achieve what you desire. And most people desire to be happy, a good portion of the time, or at least to not be unhappy, which is why I say increase happiness and decrease harm, because we don't want bad things happening to us and we do want good things happening to us. And all I'm saying is let's help people get the good things that they want in life, and let's help them avoid the bad things that they don't want in life. And if we help each other do that, then we're more powerful as a community, where we're helping each other do that, which is the point of the Freethinker Institute, is to create a community where we help each other achieve our goals, and become better people.
Yeah, I guess like sometimes for me, it feels nice to feel sad. And like, I don't want to ignore the bad emotions because they're not happiness, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't.
That's just my take on that.
Yeah, and that's like toxic positivity, where you ignore negative emotions. Like, it's not a good idea to ignore that. And so I agree with you.
Good. And then with the existential kind of viewpoint, I don't know, like where each person gets to kind of choose their own definition. It kind of feels a bit like a cop-out, because I think like everyone can choose their own definition for pretty much anything.
Right.
Like, so I don't know. It's possible, I guess, like, but it just feels like an
I
easy
agree
way
with you.
out of it.
I agree with you. It's like a whatever, right? It's like a do whatever you want, like no holds barred, do whatever you want. And that's why I kind of came up with these two other guidelines, which is increase happiness and decrease harm for the people you can influence, and be the best version of yourself and seek truth, because those seem like universally agreeable things. Like, we all want to help each other, the people that we care about, achieve their goals and not suffer as much, or not feel like they were harmed as much. I distinguish between the two. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it can be a cop-out, but it was the best answer that I've heard up until I came up with mine, which I liked better. But I still think we all choose our own meaning of life. I just think we should be guided by those other principles.
So I was thinking about the meaning of life, I guess a few years ago, and I tried to look at it from the viewpoint where, what does life try to do? What is life trying to do? So not necessarily the meaning of my personal life or individual lives, but just life in general. And it feels like, or it seems like, all life is trying to create something that can't be destroyed. And so the way I kind of think of it is like plants and animals, they reproduce and they continually find better ways to survive. So better ways for life to continue into the future, right?
Yep.
And then, so I think they're trying to find a way to, I guess, avoid life being killed off. And then I think humans kind of take it to a whole nother level, because we have things like recorded history, and we can go into space, which has potential for avoiding things like the sun blowing up in 100 million years or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I think for the most part, life is trying to survive into the future. We're trying to, and sometimes humans try to create things that are going to benefit humanity or be noteworthy, to kind of, I don't know, so for a little while I thought the meaning of life was to achieve immortality. But yeah, some people essentially have achieved a form of immortality. Sometimes it's through infamy, which isn't great, but
Right.
but yeah, so I don't know, that's sort of how I view life, is just trying to find a way to, I don't know, defy reality, I guess, or defy time in a way.
Or maybe if I restate what you're saying, it's about, evolution, and I would say learning, right? It's about learning the lessons you need to learn in life to be more successful in life. And so it's about lifelong learning, and that comes back to being the best version of ourselves. Is how do I be more effective as a human being? And how can I be the most effective I can be? And I think seeking truth helps complement that. But a lot of what you were saying, achieving immortality, like if you create a new invention, or like you mentioned, some people have, you get, I think you get what I'm saying. And I'm, I don't know if that makes sense.
I think the nice way to put it, I guess, is like the meaning of life is to benefit humanity or benefit life in general.
Right.
But yeah, even some less positive things people do can still kind of fit that definition in a weird way, I guess. But
yeah,
I don't know, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, great. Let's let Shaunak go because he has his hand up next.
Sorry.
Hi, Gareth. No, I was just thinking again about the existentialist point of view, and I'm not taking away the point with that is it's good for people who have an idea of what they want the meaning of life to be. The problem arises is that, it's just gives people too much freedom, and I don't know if people don't know what they want to do with their life, or what their meaning of their life is. And that is why and when you have an ideology like existentialism, you choose your meaning in life. I don't know the meaning of my life, that's why I'm searching for it. It doesn't really help anybody in that sense. It's good for people who already know it and well enough for them, but for people who are searching, it doesn't really lead to anything. And in that sense, I sometimes think maybe that is why, religion might be necessary for the masses. I'm not condoning it. There are problems with religion too, but the point is, it's not like a full form answer. Like, too much freedom isn't really beneficial. It's just like there are risks to, let's say, too much freedom. Can you handle that much freedom if you really think deeply into it?
Right. And that's exactly, Shaunak, why I added the two other meanings of life, is to be the best version of ourselves, seek truth, and to increase happiness and decrease harm for those we can influence. Because if you add those things, they give a kind of a direction to like a direction to walk in, right? Like, I want to continue to be, a lifelong learner and improve myself and increase my sphere of influence so I can have a more positive influence on the world. And I want the meaning that I choose to have a positive influence on the world. Now, whether I choose to be a dancer and impact people positively through emotional dancing, like, that's one choice, right? Another person could be a hedge fund manager and use capital markets. Both are perfectly valid life decisions. One pays better than the other, but like, perfectly valid life decisions. And people should be able to choose that. But that's where I say, like, being a serial murderer, shouldn't choose that because it's causing lots of unnecessary harm. And so that's where, like, for me, having those guidelines really helps put things into context and give a little bit of direction.
I understand those guidelines, but the thing that bothers me is we choose those guidelines, but what is still the matter of the fact? Like, what is these are guidelines we make up, right? It's just like what we want things to be. It's still our choice, but what is the actual fact? And as Robert said, it's on some level, if you think what could be the meaning of life, like there's a biological meaning and then there's a personal meaning or a societal meaning that we can ascribe to us. And biological meaning is completely evolutionary. It's just like to reproduce. And if you think about human behavior, like why do we do whatever we do? Why do we acquire so much resources or whatever? We are trying to survive so that other people want us, or we can regenerate into the new future, basically. But if you think about it, that survival is the only reason. And I don't sometimes feel that it's if that's all, isn't that pretty meaningless? I mean, that's the end goal, survival. It's sometimes feels a bit doesn't feel enough. That's what I'm trying to feel. Is that it?
Yeah, and it's not. I don't think survival is enough. Mi amor, papi está en una llamada. Tú puedes esperar, papi, pero no puedo ayudarte ahora, mi princesa. ¿Quieres que abro la caja? ¿Quieres que lo abro? So I would argue that it's, I came up with those ideas, but I would argue that they are inherently a part of us as human beings, as sentient beings that can think for ourselves and reason. And I'm going to try to make that argument in a paper that I'm working on universal morals, to make the argument that sorry for my daughters in the background. They want
maybe your daughter could tell us the meaning of life, please.
She's not quite there yet. They just turned 5, so I'll teach them more about that a little bit later. But she might know better than all of us, to be honest. They're both smart girls.
There's something to be said about 5-year-olds. They're pretty they're wise too.
They are, and actually they're more ethical than a lot of adults. They're pretty ethical girls.
That's right, you bet. Yeah.
So Shaunak, I would say, I don't think that I chose those meanings of life. I think I discovered them, and I think that we're all on a spiritual path of evolution, and I can make that argument if anyone wants me to, but I would say that spiritual evolution is like our long-term goal, and that's a longer conversation that gets into free will and whether or not we have a metaphysical spirit or soul. But I would argue that even if we think within our same life, just being the best version of ourselves increases our sphere of influence and helps us help our people that we are connected to achieve their goals and avoid harm, which is already a good thing. So the metaphysical argument is almost irrelevant when you think about it that way. Although I have a metaphysical argument if anyone is interested. But that said, I want to we had a lot of hands up. So Michael, why don't you go next?
Hi, everyone. Very interesting topic. I think everybody that spoke has pretty much touched on it. My definition for the meaning of life would be to contribute to evolution. And when we do focus on that, then we can take out, the mass murder things and stuff like that on a whole. When I was growing up, it was about, in the 90s, it was about, cigarettes and beer and kind of rebelling against all the stringent organizations in society. The church knew everything, the government knew everything, parents knew everything, school knew everything, school. So it just, now with my son, I just talked to him about, let's get back to the grassroots. What we put in our body is very important. When we think about, reproduction, that's the most important thing I think that we can do, as part of our contribution to evolution. And I think in society, we don't protect the family jewels enough. When we really look at it, when we talk about trying to be optimal as a society, we're not there. Obviously corporations are, poisoning us in so many different ways. So I think really just kind of getting back at that grassroots level. I think the happiness part is very subjective. I did backpack through Southeast Asia 20 years ago in 2001. And when I went through India, I was completely blown away because there's so many people and they all had smiles on their face. I could not believe it because I grew up, you know, the internet was just starting off, so you didn't have as much, you know, exposure to media as it is now. But just seeing, like, I grew up, it was just all about money, money, money. You're not happy, go quash somebody, get some money. These people were legitimately happy. And I think what it is when you start looking at Eastern philosophies, they say, get out of here, get down here, be like the birds. Yeah, the worm got away, but it's still a bright day. There's still other things out there. You know, the old saying of be open to everything and attached to nothing. You know, I think that it is just such a beautiful world. You know, I think it was Sadhguru that said, when you look at Earth from space, you say, I bet that's heaven down there. You know, the chances of us being here are, it's like, for us, you know, when you look at 4 billion years of evolution, I think it's absolutely amazing. Somebody did touch on religion a little bit about, you know, trying to do the control. The basis of that, though, is that it's rooted in essentially lies. You know, people don't know what's beyond this. They purport to do it. Yeah, people dressed up in wizard costumes trying to tell you what to do and everything like that. And ultimately, I think, again, it dumbs down society. It doesn't get at the truth, which, again, I believe is everybody's real contribution to evolution. You look at somebody like Wim Hof, the Iceman, who's done Jesus type stuff, like hiked up 20,000 feet in Mount Everest in his shorts and his sandals. And he talks about being strong, healthy, and happy, right? So again, we can all do these types of things. We all have it kind of built in with us. But I think, again, the happiness is that we can't have it on a material basis. So that's my opinion. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think, you know, be open to everything and attached to nothing is great. And that's, you know, for me, Buddhism, non-attachment is one of the secrets to happiness. And when I talked with a Buddhist monk about it, the way that I translate non-attachment is just don't be disappointed by anything. Whatever life throws at you, do the best you can, and don't be disappointed if something doesn't work out the way you wanted. And if you simply avoid disappointment and keep trying your best to do the right thing, I'd argue that you'll feel good about yourself and you'll be happy, because you're not letting anything disappoint you and you're trying your best to do the right thing with what's in your control, which is Stoic wisdom. And so using Stoicism and Buddhism, I've become an extremely happy person with both of those philosophies in tandem. With that said, I want to let Robert go.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to respond to Shonak.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the meaning of life doesn't have to just be about survival. I think it can be about a few different things. So that's why I kind of mentioned the idea of immortality. I don't see immortality really as being survival, like being the same as surviving. I mean, it can be, I guess, seen that way, but I sort of see immortality more as a way of beating time. Like time, they say time's going to come after all of us, but if you're immortal, or if you achieve something so great that you'll never be forgotten, then that is sort of a way to be like, well, you're always going to be there. So I don't know. So that's why I tried to think of like different ways. So there's the biological idea, but I think humanity has sort of moved past that in a lot of ways. And I also think like it's unfortunate, but some mass murderers will probably be remembered for a very long time. Potentially just as much as people who have achieved great things for humanity. So that's why I try to make my definition of the meaning of life like flexible to include any kind of activity that life might do. And yeah, in response to what Michael was saying, I think we're able to contribute to humanity without reproducing. I think lots of people aren't going to reproduce, and they have a variety of reasons for that. So I don't think that's the only point for existence. I think it might just be one part of it. And it is still a very valid reason for existence, but I just think humanity especially has gotten to a point where reproducing isn't really critical for our survival or our evolution. I think potentially we're moving past the need to survive in a lot of ways. So like recently I realized that greed, I understand it to be a survival instinct, and it's very useful for survival, at least personal survival. But right now, some forms of greed are actually hurting humanity. So like if we could move past those kinds of survival instincts and look at humanity more of like a social community, or I don't know, global community, I think that that's what's going to really move us into the future and help everyone benefit.
I agree, Robert, on what you said about, a different kind of survival, that immortal kind of trying to achieve that, trying to emulate the greats, basically people like Da Vinci or Michelangelo or the great artists or the great novelists. These people will be remembered in some way or the other, hopefully. I mean, we still remember them today. And hopefully their life, whatever their work, will continue to live on. And maybe 1,000 years, 500 million years, who knows what happens, but somehow they'll exist. And that seems like a worthwhile goal to work towards. I completely agree that. It seems like the only thing worthwhile to work towards. But then there's the probability of something like that happening. And the mere probability of that happening seems so low. And and we are talking about the masses here, right? We want people on a mass level to find that meaning. And if our meaning is to get immortality through that perspective, like, through our work, how many people are really expected to reach that state? Not a lot.
Yeah, I guess when I was thinking about it, I was trying to sort of understand why some people want to be famous, like so desperately want to be famous. So that's sort of where I got that from. But yeah, it's not necessarily the highest level. Like it's harder to achieve, I guess.
Right, and this is where I would argue, as long as the masses are trying to be the best version of themselves and increase, help the people in their sphere of influence be happier and suffer less harm, they are making an impact on the world in a positive way, and they can be proud of that. They don't have to be Da Vinci in order to be happy with themselves. They just have to be the best version of themselves and help those that they can influence and have a positive impact on their lives. And I think doing that can create meaning out of every life. And to play devil's advocate for those that feel like the meaning of life is procreation, I'll add on to Robert's argument and just say, what about someone who's born sterile? Do they have no meaning of their life? I don't think so. I think they do have a meaning of their life. They can positively impact people throughout their lives. Mami está durmiendo, princesa. Vale, tú. I'm going to let Paul go, and I'm going to join from my phone.
I just want to respond to
Go ahead.
comment.
I don't know. I have issues here. You get up in the morning, okay, and I'm gonna get up tomorrow morning. I'm gonna say I was in a meetup last night, and I gotta find meaning in life. How do I find meaning in life this morning? I'm gonna find immortality this morning. I gotta look for that. I gotta look for happiness. Okay, so I don't know what other terms we use. Okay, so I've gotta be the best person I can. So I'm getting up this morning. What should I do today? So to think in those lines, it seems we're going about it in the wrong way. Happiness is an assessment of what we are. I don't think you can seek happiness and make that a goal. That's an assessment. I don't think you can get up in the morning and say, I got to find meaning. That's an assessment. So there's a lot of luck involved. So sometimes, I know of people who said, there's an area in philosophy that nobody's touched on, and I'm going to specialize in that, and it'll get, maybe I'll do something interesting and something productive. And he's lucky that, hey, he became an expert in that area. But it's the doing, it's the acting, it's getting involved on a daily basis. And there's a lot of luck involved. So just to say the goal in life is to find meaning, I think that's a result of life, of living life. To find happiness is a result of what we do. It's an assessment. You know, you have children, you're lucky if you can procreate. If you can't, then you're going to find a lot of meaning out of children. And if you can't procreate, well, you can adopt kids, you can do other things. So you'll find your own way of living life to the fullest. You live life to the fullest, you're going to find meaning and you're going to find happiness, hopefully. So that's one, I think, very important point to consider when we bandy around all these solutions. The other point I was going to make is that meaning can be fleeting as well. The meaning for today may be different from the meaning for tomorrow. I have a sick friend who's dying. That's my meaning today. That's what it's all about. I got to help him. I got to save that person's life. I got to do whatever I can for him. Let's say he died and it didn't work. So tomorrow, if my daughter has a problem, or Robert or Michael has a problem, or Luella, I got to help them. So the meaning even shifts, and you can't make it like an absolute, or I don't think you can think in terms of I'm helping evolution. I'm evolving as a person. That's who I am. It's going to happen. I'm either going to procreate or I'm not going to procreate. So these are all assessments and evaluations, but they're not a way of I don't think that's how we live life. I think we live life by doing, and if we're lucky, it'll all come together. I pursue a business, and one person may say, hey, I don't think the pursuit of money is the highest ideal, but hey, it's an ideal for you. I get involved. And that's great. Somebody else gets involved, want to write a book. Somebody, Garrett likes to have a meetup, and he's find meaning in that, hopefully, and gets derived. It's by living life. It's not searching for these things. So I think we're oversimplifying. So that's the second point. And the other third point, which is contentious, okay, I'll be contentious, is about truth. I don't think it's possible to find truth or answers. And I think the day you feel that, at least for me, that I feel as soon as I find truth and I become dogmatic about it, I find I've always been wrong, and I've always had to adjust it, and I've always had to change it. And I think the important thing is to seek truth, and you keep looking for answers, but there is no answer. And the process of seeking an answer becomes meaningful in itself. That, hey, that's living life. I'm going to find, the day I find the answer, I think part of you dies, because now you're stuck to that belief, and you might as well kill yourself, because your mind stops thinking once you find the answer, whatever it is. And so those are 3 points, I think, that pertain to this discussion. Like, I can't seek these things. I think they're a byproduct. The second point is I've got to live life to the fullest and get involved. If I'm lucky, those byproducts will manifest themselves. And the third point is that I'll keep searching for the rest of my life, and I love the process. I don't have to know. I don't have to have the answers. I'm a skeptic. Keep searching.
That is exactly why the first intention is to be the best version of ourselves and seek truth, not to find truth, because I think it is an everlasting journey to keep seeking truth. But there are certain things that I sort of accept as truth, that the Earth is an oblate spheroid. I'm not going to question that. I'm not going to spend another 40 minutes with a flat earther, although I did do that once and tried to convince them that Earth was an oblate spheroid. Total waste of my time. Like, we all have to pick and choose our battles. And yes, question almost everything, but some stuff is just not worth our time to question. And I think you would agree with that, Paul. And I think you would agree that certain things are so likely to be true that they're not worth questioning anymore. And we should be looking for the things that are like useful truths to discover and be seeking the truth about those things.
But the types of truth we're talking about here are the ones that that lead to happiness and lead to meaningfulness and lead to productivity. So the truth about whether the earth, that's a truth of a different level. That we're talking about
Right.
more fact. We're talking more facts than truth. I don't call that a truth. Okay.
Right.
So you're right. I'm not going to argue about the world is flat because I
Right.
know it's round. So it's in
Right.
okay. That's not that's a truth. I won't use the word truth.
Right.
The truth we're
Right.
talking about is a totally different level. And that is fleeting. And I think we got to keep looking for it all our lives. And I think the process of searching truth is a fabulous trip and meaningful at the same time.
Yep.
But I can't think of it. I better find truth because I got to find meaning. It's going to escape me. I just got to live life, and hopefully it'll all, that, you know, those things will emerge in the way I live, and live morally, live ethically. And okay, so relating to your point of the best person to help others, the reason, one of the positive aspects of helping others is that I stop thinking internally about myself. Okay, so I don't go crazy. I don't go introspect. What am I doing? Am I crazy? Am I out of my mind? Well, no. I'm going to help Garrett. He needs help, and I'm out there living life by concentrating outwardly rather than inwardly. That's another very positive aspect of being the best person you can by helping others and things like that.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. And I would say that we have to take care of our own physical and mental health first in order to be able to help others. But once we've secured ourselves physically and mentally, then it's great to help others. And in fact, you find that the most successful people, according to the leadership books that I read, are the givers, the ones who are giving to others more than, you know, just reciprocating or just taking. And the takers are usually the last in line, although there are, you know, a reasonable number of them out there. It's not generally the winning strategy in most of life. With that said, Robert, do you want to go next?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I just had some responses, I guess, to what people are saying. Yeah, I think what Paul is saying, like, I don't think the meaning of life is defined meaning. I think for some people it can be, but it doesn't have to be. Like, I think that's just an interesting question for people. But yeah, people are clearly living their lives without having a definitive answer all the time, right? And they can still have a fulfilling life, I guess, without having a clear understanding of that big idea. But yeah, like the way I look at it is more trying to like be more general and flexible with it. So like when I think about the meaning of life, I try to think like, what is the meaning behind all kinds of life? That's sort of my perspective on it. And then, yeah, to respond to Shonak, I don't think, or I think the meaning of life is to try to achieve things like survival or immortality. Like that's what we're working towards, but it doesn't guarantee that we will achieve those things. So like the people that are chasing fame, they're trying to get that level of immortality. There's no guarantee they'll get it. It's just, I'm trying to understand why some people disregard other forms of survival and just go straight for fame, when arguably fame, I don't know, fame is fleeting, I guess, right? That's the phrase. So like, it's strange that people would chase fame when it is so risky. So yeah, so I just try to look at it that way, where they're trying to achieve it. That's sort of the purpose of the life, but it doesn't guarantee that you will achieve those things. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. Shonak.
I was going to say about fame. I think the kind of fame you are referring to, Robert, is I wouldn't even use the word fame for that. It's just more like it's something much more meaningful. It's just like today's film stars, the popular people, are going to be forgotten at max 50 years from now. Just remember how many film stars, major film stars, do we still remember from 50 years ago? Not a lot. That's a very fleeting kind of fame that, you know, you're referring to, Robert. And I agree, that's not something worthwhile striving for. It's much more meaningful. The work that we do, we want that to last. I'm guessing we want to be immortal through our work, right? And I'm guessing that's the kind of respect or legacy, basically, that we want to leave behind. But legacy seems like a much more better word. And also in terms of coming back to the question of truth, it's just like, I understand that's something really worthwhile striving for. But let's say, we are working on somebody is working on a philosophical problem, and it's an old problem, and he's trying and trying and trying to work on it. But more likely than not, this person is also going to die without finding the final answer, because it's in the nature of philosophy to not end up with the correct answer. You have to be comfortable with that anxiety. So in that sense, when I think about the striving for truth, is that enough? Because you are not going to find truth, the final truth, if there is any. So I also wonder about that. And also striving for happiness. Is striving for happiness the only worthwhile thing? It's just like, if somebody chooses a difficult path, it's quite clear that his life is going to be difficult. Let's say he wants to do something very, very great for the world. Happiness is going to be very difficult for this person. But I'm not saying that there might not be glimpses of happiness throughout his life, but lasting happiness at the end of life. We know
I personally identify with that situation, because I just stated that my goal for my not-for-profit is to help make everybody in the world, literally everybody in the world, enough money that money doesn't buy happiness, which is 90,000 USD a year. So that's a pretty ridiculously ambitious goal. And yet I'm happy 95% of my waking hours. So I don't think having big goals is mutually exclusive with happiness at all. I think happiness is, and I am doing everything I can to create an organization that will someday achieve that, not in my lifetime, but hopefully sometime after I die, that it'll be achieved. And that's all I care about, is trying my best to make it happen. Now, if I fail, at least I know I tried my best. But that doesn't get in the way of me being happy. I think we have this common misconception that just because we didn't achieve our goals, we can't be happy. And I think that's a very big misconception. Like, you can be very happy without achieving any goals, as long as you're striving to achieve those goals.
So you're saying it's more about the journey in this case.
It is. Yeah. And in fact, there's a great Buddhist saying, which is, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And I think that's a really wise saying. You don't try to become happy when you achieve your goals. You choose to be happy as you try to achieve your goals. Don't look for, something to make you happy, or achieving the goal to make you happy, because that's a fleeting happiness. Now, being happy every day of your life with everything that happens to you, good and bad, and choosing to look on the bright side and do the best you can and not worry about the things you can't control, that's a lasting happiness.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Paul said when he was talking. It is, happiness is more like a byproduct. I mean, if you're talking about, let's say the Constitution of the US, the pursuit of happiness, it's if we think about it, is that even possible? Or is it
my life, man? I'm pursuing happiness, and I mean, like, I'm living happiness every day. And all I would say is that when we say happiness, we clarified in the beginning, at least I did, like, when I say happiness, I mean achieving whatever it is you want to achieve, right? It's fulfilling your desires, whatever they may be. And so it doesn't have to be an adrenaline rush, right? That's not necessarily what makes everybody happy. And that's not everybody's definition of happiness. But that said, Ginny had her hand up for a while, and I want to let her go and see what she has to say.
You may think I'm going slightly off tangent, but I do wonder, before a human being can think about what is the meaning of life, I think you have to have the basics in your life. You have to have a roof over your head, you have food to eat.
Yep.
And before that, before the mass agricultural, what do you call it? Before we knew how to mass produce food, not mass produced as in factories, but before agriculture came into being, for example, when human beings had to live as hunter-gatherers, for example. I wonder if any of them actually sat around, wondering what is the meaning of life, I do think about it. I mean, when did people start thinking about what is the meaning? I would think that the ancient Greeks, I guess, did think about the meaning of life. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and
Definitely.
others. Yeah. But I'm wondering when that began. Again, hunter-gatherers. Did they think about the meaning of life? Anyway, it's just you may think that's went off the tangent a little bit, but I do think about those things.
That's especially an important question, Jenny, because I was actually saw a documentary once. It was about a group of hunter-gatherers still in the present day. And, as questions go, the interviewer asked, what do you think is the meaning of life? And the hunter-gatherers as a group said, what do you mean, what is the meaning of life? We don't think about those kind of questions. We are trying to survive day to day, get the next meal. So they don't think about questions like that. Now, I'm not saying that all hunter-gatherers, it's just, in this case, it's an anecdote, but it's still something to base upon. I mean, I'm sure that the cave paintings that people made, it's just like they had something to do, I'm guessing. It's just like this hunter-gatherers also looked at the sky and thought, is this all that is? I'm surviving day to day. It's just like, but when I saw that documentary and that response of a person who was still surviving day to day, it's just like they don't think about that question.
I think they did think about that question. Their answer is, I need to get food to survive another day. That was the meaning of their life, is to get food to survive another day. That had to be their meaning, because if it wasn't their meaning, then they wouldn't continue to subsist or survive.
But actually, Garrett, I mean, aren't there people there are people still in the world who live like hunter-gatherers?
Yeah, that's what Shawnix said. That's what Shawnix said, is they asked people who are currently hunter-gatherers, what do you think about the meaning of life? And Shawnix said, that their answer was, we don't think about that. We just want to hunt to get enough food. But I would argue they do think about it, because they are hunting to get enough food, and that's what they consider the meaning of their life. Now, maybe it was a bad translation. I don't speak whatever the native language was, but like I would argue that just the way that you described it, it sounds like it was a mistranslation, because they were describing the meaning of life was to survive.
Yeah, but this is the thing also it comes back to that, like, a form of the existential philosophy. It's just like, it's personal, right? The meaning to them, survival, but to somebody else, like day in, day out, trying to survive just to get some food into my belly, doesn't feel enough, right? And I'm guessing that there must be some depressed hunter-gatherer out there also thinking that same thing. It's like, why am I doing this? Just to survive day in, day out, get some food into my belly. So
I'm sure that they're not just getting food into their belly, right? Hunter-gatherers have games, and they have, they have all kinds of like entertainment type of things that they do to pass time. It's not simply survival and nothing else is a part of their life, right? They have social connections, they have meaningful relationships. And so again, like, I would argue that was, if someone translated it that way, I think it was a mistranslation, and someone didn't dig deep enough into asking the right questions to the tribe or the Native Americans or the hunter-gatherers, because I would argue their activities are focused around the things that are important to them, which are ultimately meant to help them achieve their goals and to suffer less. And so I'd argue that they are doing those things already.
Yeah.
But let me let Robert go. You had your hand up for a while.
I think you brought up the interesting point, Jenny, and I think people have already kind of said this, but I was thinking about, like, maybe we're asking these questions because maybe our purpose, like, we don't have to survive as much anymore. So maybe our purpose, or at least a lot of people, but yeah, maybe our purpose isn't as clear anymore, the purpose of our lives and what we're supposed to be achieving with our lives. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. At the same time, I do think like past societies, like I think a lot of the ideas we had now, they probably had similar ideas back then, like maybe not technology wise, but I think pondering about life and reality and stuff. But yeah, I guess I was thinking too, the times in my life where I was super busy and doing lots of things were the times where I felt less philosophical or like maybe I was too busy to philosophize, or sometimes even too happy to be thinking philosophically. So yeah, so maybe some things do kind of get in the way of those questions about the meaning of our existence. So yeah, I don't know.
I agree with you, and I think it's, it comes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like when food and shelter are handled, then we start to think about higher levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for those not familiar with it, I'll pull it up in a minute. I have to help my daughters with something, opening their paints for their game. But I found a lot of wisdom in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because we all have this hierarchy to me of like, first you have to get the critical needs met, and then you get to higher levels of relationships and emotions, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
By the way, your daughter is beautiful.
Thank you. Gonna have trouble
I
with
wouldn't mind.
teenagers.
I wouldn't mind saying something on it if now is a good time.
Yeah, please.
See, I think the whole thing is very interesting. So I was raised Catholic. So then you're kind of, reliving Christ's death, every Sunday and stuff like that. You're praying for the sinners. It's just, I think it's just very much in your head in terms of the whole Western society. You think about a mirror. We get to look in a mirror and judge ourselves, right? So I don't know when mirrors were created. I know in the last, 40, 50 years, when the sugar industry took over, an obesity epidemic started. 100 years ago, you didn't have obese people. So 200 years ago, you didn't have all those different health problems. I actually do believe that as a human being, the natural state is not to be up here and to be searching. So just like when those hunters and gatherers were asked, what is the meaning of life? They're living in the present. They're not wishing, washing, doing whatever. I think, again, the natural state is to be down here. And obviously, I actually do live alone. So I am not around, people all the time and stuff like that. So I started believing that, yes, it is a natural state. But then once you get out there around other people and you see somebody snap over something that's already happened, let's say the person that yells at the TV, right? You've just blown all that energy over nothing, So I'm not sure that that is really a natural state. You get into all the social media and stuff like that, so you start getting more self-conscious and all that. But I'm not sure if you took everything back to more prehistoric times, if people were actually stuck in their head. I don't know exactly how it was when philosophy just started, if they were, happy. I know that they were having, let's say orgies and stuff like that. And I think that part is important just to bring up, because that's the only thing that I know that can make your toes twitch in a natural state. So, I mean, it's a really powerful thing, and it's a great activity. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. So I think, again, it's just really, what is the natural state? Is it really to be up here, or is it to be down here and just living in the present and not consumed with everything else? So, I mean, it kind of brings you back. I mean, if you kind of believe in creationism, then I guess, you're going to think that, we're always in our head. But when you look at evolution over 4 billion years, at what point did we start getting in our heads? And, it's probably when those things happened. The mirrors started, Hollywood took off, and then you had, kind of the perfect body. Then you had the food corporations come in and create seed oils, which are absolutely terrible for the human body because they don't know how to process it. It made everybody fat, along with the sugar industry. So you have all these health problems. You have people all spiked up on their carbs. And so they're hungry all the time, when probably a natural diet would be a keto diet, where you have an animal-based diet. You don't have a lot of carbs at all. So I think that we've changed as a society, especially over the last 50 years. And I think that's something to think about when we try to get into, answering these types of questions, is what is really the natural state. I believe that it's really just to be deep down in the divine being that we all have inside of us. We use our head, but we don't want to have that turn into the monkey mind as being the great spoiler.
Yeah, and I'm going to use that as a leapfrog into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I think sort of talks about the evolution that you're talking about, Michael, if I'm not wrong, which is, we were all talking about physiological needs come first. And when people are hunter-gatherers, that's what they're focused on. Then you want safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, property. And then it's love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. And then it's about esteem, getting recognition, self-esteem, respect. And then self-actualization is wanting to be the most that one can be. And so that's what I talked about. This is the meaning of life, is self-actualization, which, requires kind of climbing this, I don't necessarily think you have to like climb all the way to the top. I think self-actualization can pull you up the hierarchy, in my opinion, because if you are striving to be the best that we can, if we are striving to be the best we can be, I think we will naturally pull ourselves up through this hierarchy of needs. And I think it's a good guideline, right? Let's take care of, food, water, shelter. Let's be safe and be in a safe neighborhood. And then let's have good friends, and let's feel good about ourselves and those that we have relationships with, and then strive to be the best version we can be. So
I think it's interesting, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because I mean, I am kind of new to philosophy, and I think you start getting like the East Coast, West Coast thing going on here in terms of different philosophy, because I don't think that with the Eastern philosophy, I think that they would look at that and say that you're still kind of too much in your head. You're trying to segment it. I mean, esteem, like we can all say, yeah, confidence is very important, right? But again, if you're striving for different things where you're in your head, you're striving for that happiness. And I love the quote that you said, is happiness is the way,
Right.
So again, if we just, like when I got into kind of like the Zen Buddhism, it was actually the book, the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I was like, wow, this is super powerful. But what I liked is the guy described it for me is that we have the divine being here, and this is just a spacesuit. You want to have the best spacesuit that you can have. But again, it just cured a lot of my anxiety by kind of looking at it in a different light. The divine being that we have inside of us will live forever. I think everything's perspective. You have that Russian oligarch that owned, I think it's the Chelsea football club, Abraham Romanoff or whatnot. So they were trying to interview him about different stuff over the different years. And they said, like, you grew up very poor. And he said, look, when you're a kid, if you're eating carrots or sweets, both taste good. You don't know what's on the other side. So I think, again, it's just a lot of this stuff is in perspective. I think I think when we look at it, and again, I'm open-minded to everything, and I'm learning a lot here, and I'm loving all the ideas and stuff like that. But again, when you get into the East Coast, when you get into the Eastern philosophies versus Western philosophies, I think that there is quite a difference in terms of where your head should be. Because again, I think esteem is partly stuck in here. Whereas if you're not thinking about it, oh, people are going to judge me, then you can be down here. So I think it's quite interesting. Thoughts?
I don't know. For me personally, I really like kind of living in my head. I feel like I get more satisfaction out of that than trying to feel grounded all the time in what I do. And like, I don't know, I guess Garrett's not here to hear this, but like, I don't think I like being happy all the time. Like, I don't think I want to be happy all the time. Happiness is sometimes tiring or exhausting. Or some of my, I feel like some of my good ideas come from like when I'm sad and stuff.
I agree. I agree completely. The thing is the reality is I love expressing like my sad emotions. If I hear a sad story or something, I love bawling, to be honest with you. I mean, there's nothing unmanly about it. I'm a human being. And I mean, to me, the whole happiness thing, it's overrated, right? If I'm up here thinking about this right here, to a lot of people is anxiety. So you're thinking about it. But I agree, as long as you're not expending energy being up here, then there's nothing wrong with it. You know, you want to use all the tools in the toolkit, but you have to tap into the intelligence of the body. The body isn't the mind, and the head isn't just for carrying around. It's just really just finding really what that sync is, you know? So I agree. I mean, happiness is completely like, I don't even strive for it. I just strive just to be neutral, attached to nothing, just try to enjoy the life that I can and try to contribute to evolution, not through procreation, but just through being a person out there that's, you know, positive and just happy to be on planet Earth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, that the duality of mind and body doesn't have to be that way, right? Like the way I see my body is it's telling me all these things and my mind is supposed to listen. Like they're supposed to work together, not just be two separate things. But yeah, I was thinking too, like when I am in survival mode, that doesn't mean that my brain just stops working. Like my brain's still running all the time. And I don't know, sometimes I like think more like an engineer where I'm trying to like, if I'm doing something, I'm thinking, okay, what's a better way to do this, right? Even if it's just like, I don't know, a random task. So I don't know. So yeah, I don't know if there has to be those kinds of divisions between things. I guess one way I see it is like everyone's different. So like everyone will have different purposes with their life and want different things. And I think that's a good thing. But yeah, just for when people say like, why do people want to like live up in the clouds? I'm like, well, because it's, for me, that's nice, but not for everybody. And I think that's good that, yeah, if everyone lived up in the clouds, we might have problems. I don't know.
What do you mean by clouds?
Well, just like living up in your head, or I don't know, not always focusing on practical things, I guess.
Yeah, I think
like
I think it's just a balance. But again, I mean, your balance is your balance. I mean, you know, you're peaceful, like everybody's just going to be happy for you. And again, just as a society kind of getting out of being judgmental, you know, I think that'll kind of make the world a much better place, you know. So I agree. I think we all just have to really be open to different ideas. But yeah, well said. I mean, it's just you know, you have a body and a mind, and really, I mean, part of it is to not separate them and to look at them as a whole, and whatever kind of makes you happy. You know, again, I just think as long as it's not a frustration or a negative that you're stuck up here, then yeah, I mean, you're doing well then.
Sometimes,
you know, and even if you're solving issues, yeah, I mean, go for it. You know, it's the most complex thing that we know in the universe is the human brain. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if I substituted happiness for helping people achieve their goals,
would that be a more agreeable term for you guys, like helping people achieve their goals and minimizing harm, which is basically, things that people would prefer to avoid in their lives? I guess maybe that's another way of saying it, that I think people have an allergy to happiness. At least I've noticed that in having these conversations. And there's a general association of happiness being fleeting and not sustainable. And I don't think that's true, because like I said, I'm happy 95% of my waking hours. So I know that it's sustainable and achievable, and I love it. But I guess whatever people's goals are, I think that's what we should be striving for in the world, is helping people achieve whatever they desire. But I do think that most people, if they know that sustainable happiness is an option, they would choose that over, regular unhappiness, right? Like, pick a suicidal person, give them a recipe for being happy. I bet you they would prefer that than being suicidal. And I've had those conversations with people who are suicidal, and they do generally prefer that. They just don't always know the right path to get to happiness, and they need some guidance.
Absolutely. I think it's really, again, sustained happiness is only, this is my opinion, is only achieved through being attached to nothing and open to everything. That's my own opinion, but the only quote that I've written down so far is happiness is the way. And I think that kind of sums it up, where it's not the end where you get to it and then, hey, I'm happy, because you do see a lot of people that achieve great things. Let's say somebody wins the lottery or something like that. And the thing is, more money, more problems. You just, you got more people coming around. So I think, again, it's just I like that definition of happiness is the way. I think it's an overrated term, but I think it's at the same time, I mean, it sums up a lot of things. It's just it's almost just like being content, but again, a little bit more, positive contention, so I think happiness is fine, but go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I mean. Is when I say happiness, I'm talking about sustainable happiness, which I'd argue, like, if someone wants another goal, sure, like, go for it. But I'd argue most people, if they could choose to have a more positive emotional state, they would prefer a more positive emotional state, which is what I mean by happiness, than a negative one. We all have negative emotions. I'm not saying we should deny them or suppress them or anything like that. We need to deal with the root causes of those negativities and acknowledge them and fix the root cause. But that doesn't mean that, I guess that doesn't mean that happiness is not a good thing to strive for. Even though we have negative emotional states and can accept them and make them a part of our lives and not be, disappointed by them, that doesn't mean that happiness isn't a good thing to strive for. I'd argue it still is. And I'd argue that, I'm curious, Robert, if you disagree, because you seem to like largely disagree with the idea that happiness is a good thing to go for. I guess I'm curious, like, what part of achieving your goals do you think is not desirable?
Oh, sorry. I don't know. I think I like my negative emotions sometimes, even though they're
but again, I'm not
like,
saying give up your negative emotions. I'm not saying that, but like.
But sometimes, like, I might want to strive towards them. Like, sometimes it feels good to watch a sad movie instead of a happy one. Anyway, but yeah, just in general, like, I think I prefer the word satisfied, because I think you can feel satisfied without achieving your goal sometimes. Like, even if you don't accomplish something, you can still feel satisfied. So, like, I would even go to as far as maybe update my meaning of life to say that everyone should feel satisfied. Like, that's sort of the goal of life, is to feel satisfied.
And the new philosophical term that they use instead of happiness is flourishing, which is, intended to be another, sort of way of saying in what I mean by happiness, which is sustainably positive emotional state and achieving the goals that you're striving for. And if one of your goals is to watch a sad movie, cool, you're striving to achieve that. Go ahead. It makes you happy to watch a sad movie. That's still, I still consider, that's what I mean by happiness. You can tell me your definition of happiness is different, but you can't tell me what mine is. So that's what I mean by happiness is you can watch a sad movie, and, that's what you're trying to achieve. That's what I mean by happiness is you're achieving your goals. Not that you are in a positive serotonin state constantly, because no one is that. You know, I say I'm happy 95% of the time. I mean, I'm either happy or neutral, you know, not that I'm positively having like huge serotonin, you know, outtake in my brain on a constant basis. Does that make sense?
I guess. I think that's why it's easy to get stuck on that word, though. But yeah, Shonak has had their hand up for a while.
Yeah, sorry, I was downstairs with my kids. Go ahead, Shonak.
Yeah, I was saying the word that you're looking for, the flourishing, it's called eudaimonia. So that's basically the word. But now, since we are talking about, achieving our goals, the next question, I was wondering, what do you guys think? Like, what should be our goals, or what should be the criteria for choosing our goals? It's just like, I mean, we understand, okay, the meaning of life is strive towards our goal, but to strive towards our goal, we first need to know what our goals are and what should be the criteria.
That's why I say, you know, for me, like being the best version of ourselves, seeking truth, and increasing happiness and decreasing harm are laudable goals. You know, to me, those are good goals to strive for. Now, we should recognize we're not going to achieve 100% happiness. And sometimes, you know, Robert doesn't want happiness. He wants to watch a sad movie. And sometimes I do too. And that's fine too. But, you know, overall, trying to have a net positive impact on the happiness of people we can influence, I think is a good thing to be striving for.
No, but I understand, Garrett. But the thing is, that path, that it's an abstract criteria. I understand that. The point is, if we want to go much more deeper, as in that being able to bring net positive to people is possible through different paths. You could be a doctor, you could be an engineer, you could be a social worker, you could be a counselor. All these paths will lead, if you do them correctly with the right dedication, will lead to positive net output. The point is, how do you know which path is the right one for you, and what do you guys think what that goal should be? I'm talking about the specifics. It's more about how do you pinpoint. I understand the larger concrete idea about what we must do. The point is, how should we choose what is the right thing for us? And it comes back to you choosing for ourselves, but then again, the question is, that's too much freedom.
I don't think it is too much freedom. I think you should look at what are the possible paths you could go down and decide which one, you know, helps you, like feels right for you, that is also increasing happiness and decreasing harm and helping you, you know, focus on evolution, like personal growth. And if you're personally growing, you're seeking truth, and you're having a net positive impact on the people in your life, then cool. You know, if being a dancer helps you do that and you don't mind not making a lot of money, cool. If you want to make a lot of money and you want to help, you know, fund people's education so they can get new careers and be an effective altruist, which is what I'm trying to move in the direction of, then you have to make money and you have to choose something that's going to make money. And so I think that freedom is, you know, we're given that freedom. We have it whether we like it or not. So, you know, if you want your freedom to be limited, you can choose to limit it, but you're choosing to limit it. And so I think you have that freedom whether you like it or not. And your best choice of action is to look at all your possible paths and feel out which one is the right one for you.
So I agree with that one on you. It's more like the question of survivability as well. So it's more like, I've seen a lot of people, let's say doctors, just, you know, they become doctors because it's a stable life. The question, and obviously it leads to, you know, bettering lives of people. It's a positive occupation. But then again, it's also a question about whether they actually like that occupation or not, right? And obviously,
if you're a good doctor, Shonak, you're improving people's lives. If you're a bad doctor, you could be killing people, right? So, you know, there are bad doctors out there that get no longer covered by insurance, and they chose to be doctors probably for the wrong reasons, because of the money rather than because they have a passion for helping people. So, you know, you have to choose something that is authentic to what your desires are, because choosing something for the wrong reasons is going to end up with you being unhappy and probably not as successful in that path.
I think some successful doctors aren't always satisfied with their life. Like if you were
Agreed.
told to be a doctor, that's what I was thinking. Like I would just ask the person which path gives you the most satisfaction or fulfillment in your life, makes more satisfaction. But like, even if you're not good at it, you can still have a great life doing something that gives you satisfaction instead of trying to do something that you think will benefit humanity more, kind of, and try to focus, like, base it off that goal, right?
The thing is that there's always this fear of somebody who is established, let's say, you know, this happens very often, I'm guessing, for people. It's just like they're established in a career, but they're still stuck in it. It's like they're not enjoying it. I'm talking about, let's talk about the doctor example itself. It's like, I mean, by all means, they're doing net positive to the world. They're not happy themselves, though.
But Shaunak, I can jump in here because I did research on this for the Freethinker Institute, and it turns out more than 50% of people are unhappy in their current jobs. I mean, think about that. More than half of people are unhappy in their current jobs. That's like kind of scary to think about it.
It just doesn't feel right on a society level that should be happening.
I think people are making decisions for the wrong reasons. We have a lot of bad philosophy out there, and this comes back to, we should talk another, and we can pivot if we want to talk about self-worth. But for me, like, self-worth should be based on trying your hardest to do what you think is right. And a lot of people measure self-worth in how much money they make, or how much status they have, or how famous they are, like was mentioned earlier. And so a lot of people value themselves based on criteria that, in my opinion, is not the right way to value yourself. You should value yourself on whether or not you're trying hard to do the right thing. And do the right thing, to me, is to help people in your sphere of influence be satisfied, achieve their goals, be happy, and reduce the amount of harm that they suffer from altogether. If you're doing those things, then like you should be satisfied. If you're doing things that move in that direction, and you're doing something that does that for you as well, you should be satisfied with yourself. And I think that because people have so many, I honestly think that the root cause of people being in bad situations is a lot of bad philosophy, but it's also a lot of bad philosophy amongst leaders that create unhealthy cultures. I think a lot of corporate America culture is very unhealthy, and that leads to a lot of job dissatisfaction.
What worries me out most of the time, which I think worries most people, it's about the stability. It's just like you have to, if you're searching for happiness, or if you're searching for flourishing, there's always a risk to your stability. And the thing is, if we are talking about the 90,000 a year thing again, it's just like, it's not that there aren't going to be a lot of positions and jobs out there which are going to pay you 90,000 a year without it having its drawbacks, right? It's like not all those jobs that provide that much money are, let's say, happy jobs, right? There's always a trade-off there. So the problem arises in how do you handle that trade-off, right? I wonder if people agree with that or not as well.
I guess I don't know that higher paying jobs are more likely to make you unhappy. I think choosing a higher paying job for the wrong reasons is more likely to make you unhappy. But I would argue higher paying jobs usually have a lot more freedom. And so you have to guide yourself towards your own happiness with your own free will and your own decision-making process. And so your happiness is more in your control with higher paying jobs than it is with lower paying jobs, right? If you're clocking in and clocking out in a minimum wage job, you have a lot less freedom and a lot less choices, and you're given very clear direction on what to do. I'd argue it's much harder to be happy for me in that job than it is to do what I do, which, I do well when I'm working for someone else. I'm an entrepreneur now, but, I think higher paying jobs generally have more freedom, and that gives more of an opportunity to be happy. But just the opportunity, like we have to avail ourselves of it too. And the other thing I had another thought, but if anyone else wants to go, I'll try to remember what I was going to say.
No, I was also, let's take the example of occupation of a teacher, a person who wants to become a teacher for the right reasons, right? Sadly, the society that we live in, it's just like, the job itself does not pay enough, let's say, right?
So that's actually getting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shanik. Let me let you finish your thought, and then I remembered what I wanted to say.
I was just saying that the way the economics is, it's just like that job is not going to pay that much. I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm just saying that as a matter of fact. So
it's only a matter of fact today, Shanik, because if you look at, and this is where I was going before, if you look at GDP per capita in the Roman Empire, in modern USD dollars, it was about 500 USD per year that was made in the Roman Empire. If you look at 1900 in the US, it was about 5,000 USD per year. If you look at right now in the US, it's about 56,000 USD per year. So imagine 100 years from now, we're exponentially increasing in GDP per capita in current day dollars. So the GDP per capita, in the US is going to be at least $500,000 in 100 years from now. If we're not at least paying teachers, 90,000 USD per year in current USD dollars, when the average salary or the average income is 500,000, something is going really wrong. But I will also say that right now we're not headed in the direction where that will happen. And that's part of why I started the organization, is to try to have at least one other force fighting for more socioeconomic equality and fairness, so that when we do have enough money that everybody can get paid enough money, that money doesn't buy happiness anymore, that it actually happens, rather than basically having a slave labor class that theoretically has freedom but is more or less a wage slave. So let me let Robert go.
I don't know. I feel like focusing on money, I don't know what they say, money doesn't buy happiness, I guess. But I was thinking how yeah, if you are an unsuccessful painter, let's say, but you get satisfaction out of painting, or you enjoy painting, that's your passion in life. Even if you're unsuccessful, isn't it still worthwhile to take that path? I mean, assuming you still have a means of surviving, I guess. But
that's a big assumption, right, Robert? Like, if you're a painter that's unsuccessful,
I have an opinion on that, because I am an artist.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that most teachers are in it for the right reasons. I've come across a few teachers as a substitute teacher where I didn't feel like the teachers were in it for the right reason. They got it because they got the job because they thought it would kind of be like an honorable thing. But as far as being an artist, from what I've been able to experience so far, you can't really. It feels like I now feel like I see people from other countries coming into my country and telling us on all these different things all over YouTube and the internet and all over Facebook, to giving off this message of that we need to do what we want to do, and all these things, quit your job and do what you want to do. It seems to be the message coming from people from other countries, and then they have their people from their countries becoming engineers and doctors in my country. That's what I feel like I see happening. So I feel like they're coming in and telling us Americans to go be an artist, follow your dream, and then they go and take the higher paying jobs. And anyhow, that's what I feel like I've seen happen to me and my fellow artist friends.
So the other thing to mention, Robert, is money does buy happiness up to $90,000 USD a year, according to scientific studies of happiness and wealth.
That's focused on happiness, though.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it does. You said money doesn't buy happiness. I just want to clarify that, physiological needs. If you can't pay for enough, if you have to eat cat food to survive, you're not going to be very happy. And if you think that someone can, be like is going to enjoy life living on cat food? I'm sorry, I disagree with that. Like anyone, and here's another example is, let's suppose you get cancer and you're poor, right? And you can't afford cancer treatment. Well, now you're going to die, and you basically get a death sentence because you're poor. And you just basically, because you followed your dreams that for a job that didn't pay well, you now have a death sentence because we have no health care in this country for people that are poor, which to me seems super unethical. And most of the rest of the world agrees with that and has national health care. Now, I don't believe that's a complicated subject for another day, but I'm just saying that money can literally be life and death in those situations.
So you mentioned earlier your ideal version of the world is that everyone makes enough money that they're above the level of happiness, kind of. That
money doesn't buy happiness
right?
anymore, exactly. Which in 100 years from now we could easily achieve.
So if at that point, why can't people do what they want if they
should be able to? And in fact, I would love if Darlene could make $90,000 a year as an artist and not have to worry about it, right? And 100 years from now, the Darlene that is her great grandkids should be able to make $90,000 a year being an artist. And that's the future that I work 100 plus hours a week for, is to make that become a reality sometime after I die, probably a couple generations after the earliest.
Yeah, so that was what I was saying earlier, is that like I think a lot of artists end up having a second job because unfortunately it's undervalued in society, in my opinion. But yeah, like I did add that kind of extra thing saying that if you're able to do what you are passionate about while also being able to get enough to survive, not on cat food, on human food,
right,
then personally, I struggle to see why you would not choose that path. There's the noble sense of helping humanity, but at the end of the day, if that's not what you're passionate about, you could end up hurting people more than helping people. Like that's not really necessarily a good reason to take a certain path. It's to try to be noble, I guess. Like for my thinking is that there's enough people in the world that if everyone did what they were passionate about, we would benefit more from that than trying to say that certain jobs are more valuable to humanity than other jobs.
Darlene, I'm curious, you said something that struck me as surprising because I've never heard this before. This concept that foreigners are telling Americans what to do, or even that they could tell Americans what to do with our lives. Have you had foreigners tell you that you should be an artist and not to be an engineer, like as you were deciding what to study for school?
I've attended multiple workshops, and because I'm an artist and I look up artist things online, I think more artist things come at my Facebook page. Just that's what I feel like, and then I started noticing that, wait a minute, that is somebody from another country doing this video saying for people should do this, and so I don't know. I right now I'm of the opinion that if I had become an engineer like my sister is, because my sister makes more than 180,000 a year as an engineer. If I worked and she was working for a while only half time, and I'm like, if I had become an engineer, which I'm fully capable of, I was very good in science and math too. Like I remember laughing when she got a bad grade on one of her college things because she didn't know what a piston was, and I'm like, I'm the artist in the family and I knew what a piston was, but they just assumed on this engineering test that people would know what a piston is. They didn't explain in the engineering class what a piston was, and so she was really upset. They never told us what a piston was. It was kind of funny. But if I had become an engineer, I could have worked part-time as an engineer, and I would have had enough supplies to buy canvas material. Like I have a lot of paintbrushes and paints, but I currently don't have enough money to buy canvas material to even make my own canvases. And I know how to make my own canvases. But if I had been part-time engineer, part-time artist, I would be producing more art now if I had become an engineer.
So if you like engineering, Darlene, just to throw it out there, why not take a coding boot camp? You don't need a degree in engineering to be a developer. You could take a coding boot camp, or you could even teach yourself if you want. I have a whole bunch of tutorials that can get you, dangerous with, a very common tech stack that there's a lot of demand for. If you want to do it, that's part of what, the Freethinker Institute is about, is helping people find their dream job and get a valuable skill set in it. So I'm happy to help you if you want to pursue that, and we can talk about it offline if you're interested. And it's a great idea. Like I highly encourage the engineering route, and use your spare money to buy in. If you're an engineer, you'll have all the artist supplies you want. Trust me.
May I ask? May
Go
I
ahead,
say
Ginny.
something
But then
to
Shauna has his
Darlene?
hand up.
Hi, Darlene. This is Ginny. I know that when my sister and I were younger, I was in New York to be an actress and performing and living from hand to mouth, so to speak. So yeah, pursuing a theater career is just as difficult as being a fine artist, I must say. So I spent a lot of time typing away at a typist in many offices over the years. But I also remember when my sister was in nursing school, she called me one day and said, I don't have enough to pay for my tuition. And whatever money I had from typing or whatever, I sent it over to my sister so she could pay her tuition, part of her tuition for nursing school. So I'm wondering, if your sister is doing quite well as an engineer, would she be able to help you financially, temporarily, help you buy canvas so then you can create some wonderful art and maybe you can sell and then be on your feet again, so to speak? Your sisters do help each other, so I wouldn't
I'm
feel
going to type something in the chat, okay? So
She might be in the same room. So, and the other thing, I was going to go down the same path, Ginny, but I was going to suggest that the sister pay for a coding boot camp, so that Darlene could become an engineer and then buy her own canvases. I'm a big believer in don't give someone fish, teach them to fish, and so that was my thought. But that said, I'll let Darlene type and let Shauna go.
Now, I just wanted to say a bit about that study. I mean, some time ago, that study has been quoted so many times. It's a lot of people know that. But some time ago, I saw a video and I posted a link of that video in the chat if anybody is interested. There are some issues with that studies as well, and if anybody's interested, they could look into it. The thing is, this question about that money doesn't buy happiness is much more complicated. If what the video and the further research kind of suggests is that if you earn just a little bit on that, you're not going to have of what you are earning currently, you're not going to have some kind of a lasting happiness. It seems like if you're like doubling your income, like there's a magnitude difference. There is a significant change in happiness in people's life in terms of money. And when you think about that and question, okay, people say don't chase money. It's that's another thing to consider as well when you think of it from that point of view. Something the video basically says that you have to look at it from different views as well. If you could double your income, let's say, you could be significantly much happier, even if you're doing a crappy job or something like that. If people are interested, they can have a look at that video. I just wanted to point that out.
Hi, everyone. I think it's a very interesting topic, so thanks to everybody contributing. Going back to our friend Buddha, he does say that the root of all suffering is desire. I do work in a seasonable business. I'm in Niagara Falls, Canada. I do electric bike rentals. And I didn't do a ton of market research, but I knew that this was a good area to launch e-bikes. But it's a very seasonable business, more seasonable than I thought. It does get windy here in October, so I really have a short season. So I didn't really make any money this past winter. My season's just kind of firing up here. But I did spend my time kind of getting in the best shape of my life. And I also then was able to open it up to more of learning about philosophy and doing different types of networking and stuff like that. So I think, again, it's all perspective. Financial health is a big part of mental health. There's absolutely no question about it. If you can't pay the bills or you've extended yourself out, it's hard to sleep at night. So I think, again, it's just finding what that balance is. But, just as we're talking about this, like how do, I guess the question was posed of like, how do we know, if we're achieving, the meaning of life? What's the definition? I personally think that that's going to change almost on a daily basis because every experience is going to shape you. Life is about change. It's not going to stay the same. And once you see that, then you can start enjoying it more. But I think, again, a big part of it is that when I look at every single thing in my life, when I look at my business, I look at my kids, I look at every single thing, I personally believe that my body is the most important thing. And I don't separate the mind and the body. It's all in one. And I really believe that everybody should try to realize their full physical potential. It leads them in much better situations. As I said as well, that I did go on a keto diet via the carnivore diet. So I don't have any fruits or vegetables. I've done research on that, and they do have evolutionary properties that they're basically trying to kill you. They have poison in there. If you do the research on it, I think it's a good primitive diet. Then you're burning ketones instead of like glycogen from the carbs as energy for the brain. The brain's supposed to take up about 20% of your energy. It's very important. You have the vagus nerve going right from your gut to your brain. So I think these are all the different things that we can kind of look at to be in that optimal situation, but the glass can always be half full. And I think, again, it's just that we have an open mind. I think it was a great idea there, bouncing off of looking at the resources that are right there. I think, as I tell my son, for being in school, be the teacher's pet. Use your charm and charisma to forge relationships and connections. And, one conversation can change your life. So I think it's really just all open. You never know when your break is going to come. But if you put yourself, it's the preparation meets opportunity. So the financial thing is important, but it's not everything. It opens up another door there. If I didn't own my own business, I'd have, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks off a year. I don't know that I would have time to have learned about Eastern philosophies. I wasn't introduced to it. And I just can't believe how much, the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and the practices of Buddhism have really improved my life.
It's great to hear. I love Buddhism as well. And I kind of want to wind down because it's 9 o'clock, which is when we typically end. But I do want to give everybody a chance to say one thing that you learned today, and maybe we'll go around. I'll call people out in the order that they're on my screen. Just maybe say one thing that you learned today. And I also want to say, Michael, I love how you keep talking about having an open mind, because that's one of the Freethinker Institute's values is transparency and open-mindedness is the second intention right after being the best version of ourselves and seeking truth. You have to have an open mind to new truths that will help you be a better person and find truth. If you're not open to new ideas, then you're never going to grow and develop, and you're never going to learn new things. That's, being open-minded is critical to any kind of growth or learning or anything like that. So that said, maybe we'll start with Shaunak. Shaunak, what did you learn this evening, if anything?
I just loved hearing everybody and their views. I mean, obviously, I've heard many of these views before as well. thought about these possibilities and whatnot. And sometimes I really wonder, if I'm just being short, it's just like, if the meaning of life is to just keep on searching for the meaning of life, it's like a circular thing at this point. But that also seems like a possibility at this point. But I really loved hearing other people's views, so thank you.
Great, thanks, Shauna. How about you, Michael?
Just on that, I mean, I'm coming away with this still believing that, the meaning of life is evolution. You just want to be in part of the change. Just going back, Garrett, to what you just mentioned about having the open mind, is that every emotion, every opinion we have has an emotion attached to it. So again, I think it just really just leave it open. I had been studying meditation, so I was telling my kids and people around, hey, the way you breathe, what's most important is breathing out longer than what you breathe in. But then you get somebody like Wim Hof, the Dutchman, who's doing Jesus type stuff. He says, no, he breathes in longer and breathes out less so that he has more oxygen. So you just leave everything open. The thing that I came away with, I already mentioned, and thanks to you, Garrett, I love it. Happiness is the way. It's not the destination.
That's a Buddhist saying, so you're consistent liking Buddhism. It's a like Buddhism and Stoicism are the two fountains of knowledge that I've learned the most from. So if you like Buddhism, you may like Stoicism as well. They both hold reason as the highest good, if you will. And so that's why I find them all, like, they resonate with me rationally. That said, Darlene, do you want to share your takeaways for the evening?
Yeah, open-mindedness is good, and learning the Eastern philosophies does help us be more well-rounded. That's all. Yeah.
Great. And Robert, what about you?
I don't know. Yeah, I appreciate hearing different points of view, and I don't know, like learning from other people's experiences, that like experiences that I haven't had. So I really benefited from that. I guess my one takeaway is that I think maybe some of my ideas are, I use the term up in the clouds, like they're sort of dreamer ideas that, I don't know, I guess for me are, I don't know, like they don't always come off as practical, I guess. And I think that's like, I think people would like them, but I think it's so up in the clouds, it's hard to see how to get there sometimes. Even for me, it's just like, it's just a nice thought. I don't know. Maybe I should be a little more practical sometimes.
You're not faking your smile. I think that's what's important. It's you're real, and everybody's going to have a different path, and you're not going to be able to define it for an individual. It's up for them to pull in all the information. So I mean, I loved what you said, is that it's not all about happiness, and I thought it was great.
I also always enjoy what Robert has to say. He says things with such a calm and stoic manner, in my opinion, Robert. I enjoy the way you say things and what you say. I know I've been in a lot of meetings, FICUS meetings and all that. So
thanks.
I think you're living your life well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in fact, Robert, I'm sharing a paper on in the online community in the reference channel about why I'm a realistic idealist and why you should be one too. Like, I'm a dreamer as well, and all I would argue is that it's good to have realistic goals towards achieving those dreams. And dreaming is a great thing, and we shouldn't limit ourselves. We should dream big. But you can read the paper if that topic interests you. It sounded like it might, so I thought I'd share it in the online community. Luella, Luella, do you want to share anything that you took away from tonight? How about Will? Do you want to share any takeaways? Our silent observers, that's fine too. It's always fine to listen in. we love participation, but not everybody wants to, and that's totally fine. So listening in is totally fine too. So I just want to thank you all for coming and for the great conversation. Really enjoyed it. For me, the takeaway was I see a pattern of people saying that happiness is not what they desire, which I find really interesting. I guess for me, like, I legitimately feel like coping with sadness actually is, like, for me, something that makes me happy if I cope with sadness well. And so for me, it's all like, it all comes back to happiness. That's like my North Star is more happiness for me and the people that I can influence. But it's interesting to hear that there's a very diverse set of opinions out there, and that lots of people see that differently. I still think, I have to think about whether or not I want to rephrase that in a way that's more indicative of what I'm trying to get at, rather than getting stuck in the semantics of what is happiness and what do I mean by happiness. So that said, that's something for me to ponder on, and I appreciate the everybody's contributions, and want to thank you all for coming, and hope you all have a great rest of your night. And I hope you'll come next week. We're going to talk about climate change, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of arguments for and against climate change being a product of human intervention. And I think it'll be interesting. I think we're going to talk about stuff that hasn't, so far as I've seen, been talked about in a public discourses. And just to set the stage, the argument that I hear from people who don't think that climate change is human caused is that we are within the natural fluctuations since Earth's beginning. And when I looked that up, the climate change fluctuations since Earth's beginning, we're actually in one of the cooler areas of since Earth's beginning, which I found really interesting. But a lot of people that are very credible say that climate change is human caused, and I think someone in the online community came up with a good rationale for why there may actually be a counter argument to that argument. But it's interesting to me that none of the people proposing that climate change is a real problem are using that argument, even though this is the back and forth between people who say climate change is a problem and is not. And so I think it'll be an interesting conversation. I want everyone to bring their sources, ideally objective sources, not politically biased sources, for and against climate change. And I'll start with the particular topic that I mentioned there, and we'll talk about the pros and cons. And then we'll have hopefully another interesting conversation. So thanks a lot, and I have to get my daughter milk now.
Could I also say goodbye to your daughter, please?
You can. Aaliyah, say goodbye. Here, come here. Wave, say goodbye.
Bye.
That's my other daughter. You saw Laura before. This is Aaliyah.
Well,
so.
thank you. That was a treat to see your daughter. Say goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay.
They're very cute.
Thank you. All right. Thank you,
I know
Derek.
I'm biased, but thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Okay,
good.
bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.